In the first part of this lesson, I will describe a number of principles for giving and receiving feedback that can be applied to any personal or professional situation. In the second part, I will offer some ideas for promoting and organizing feedback in adult learning groups. Feedback offers the opportunity to learn about how others perceive us and our actions. Also, feedback allows us to check whether our perceptions about what we believe others think about us are actually true, thus enabling a communication based on facts rather than stereotypes. Giving feedback is often synonymous with criticizing a person's actions, but criticizing is a delicate process. If it is poorly done, it can easily be misunderstood and cause bad feelings or even conflicts. Therefore, in the following I will present a number of principles that ensure feedback is provided in a way that is both informative and easy to consent to. They are based on the ideas of the American psychologist Carl Rogers. If I am the one who is giving feedback to another person, it is important to always remember that I do not present an objective truth, but only my subjective perspective on an experienced situation. The rabbit-duck image in the center of the slide is a good guiding metaphor for the feedback process. In this image, one can see a duck and a rabbit, but only one or the other at the same time. The underpinning purpose of feedback is to describe my perspective on a situation. Therefore, the first principle I want to introduce is the I principle. I should talk about my own feelings and my observations. By beginning my sentences with I or my, I stress that this is my subjective view. I got angry when you interrupted me and I could not finish my thought. The second principle is the you principle. I should talk directly to the person I give feedback to, not about him. So instead of saying he did this and this, I should say you did this and this. Things that are said to me directly are more personal and are easier to accept than if people talk about me. For example, instead of saying, I had the impression that Anna had not understood the task completely, I should say, Anna, I got the impression that you had not understood the task completely. The next principle is, describe what happened. Do not evaluate the person and do not jump to interpretations, generalizations, or conclusions. The function of feedback is to share information about my observations and feelings about a certain behavior or event. It is the recipient's responsibility to consider what has been said and to draw conclusions from it. There are two common bad practices in giving feedback that I experience often. Many people try to soften their criticism by including in their feedback a potential explanation for the other person's actions. I can understand why you were nervous in this situation, or I guess Peter made you angry, this made you do this and this. Such speculations are unnecessary and not very helpful. Only the recipient can know what were the reasons for his or her actions. For the person giving feedback, it is better to keep to the facts and describe what he saw and how he experienced it. The second potentially bad practice is to present feedback as advice. Advice is a good thing if it is asked for. But in most other situations it tends to create irritation, as in most situations we ourselves know very well how we should have acted or what we could do differently. The final principle for giving feedback is to be honest and specific. Feedback should be considered a learning opportunity, but when we keep our observations and feelings to ourselves, we deny the other person this opportunity. We should offer feedback both on positive and negative actions that we have perceived. Regarding negative feedback, it is important to also consider the needs of the recipient. Only comment on things that can be changed, find the right moment and setting, etc. Regarding positive feedback, everybody likes to be complimented on a job well done. Giving honest praise is highly motivating and does not cost anything. But both positive and negative feedback will be most useful if it is specific. For example, instead of saying, "Peter is always prepared to help others," I should describe what he actually did. "Peter, when you shared your experience with us, this really helped our group to move forward and to fulfill the task in time." On this slide, I have outlined a number of things the person receiving feedback can do to increase its value. If I receive feedback, it is mandatory for me to listen to it. If the feedback is negative, this is extremely difficult to do because whenever we are getting criticized, we want to provide explanations and to make excuses. But as soon as we start doing this, we are spending more time thinking about our response to what has been said than on listening what the other person actually is saying. It is important to remember that feedback It is important to remember that feedback provides the opportunity to learn about how others perceived our actions. Even if I do not agree with what the person is telling me, I can listen to his or her view. If I interrupt or start opposing the speaker, I will deny myself the opportunity to understand the other person's perspective. In training seminars, I often introduce the 2 minutes rule. The person receiving feedback has to remain silent for at least 2 minutes. Only clarifying questions are allowed. And now some thoughts about promoting feedback in learning groups. Giving open and honest feedback requires a high degree of trust. And this is not present in new groups. It has to be developed over time. So, create space for feedback and show that it is welcome. For example, you could allocate a fixed amount of time after a training session or after a day's work that is dedicated to feedback. After a while, participants will get familiar with this routine and start making better use of it. The feedback process will be more fruitful if I have already considered what I want to learn from others and can put forward specific questions. For example, in your opinion, what are 2 things I should improve in my work? How could I have completed this task faster and more effectively? If my job was done by the ideal employee, what would he do differently? What more can I do to help accomplish our goals? Finally, I have to evaluate the feedback I have received. I should find time to reflect on what I have learned. If I do not agree with the feedback, it is a valuable exercise to try to figure out why the other side got the wrong impression of me. I can also ask other participants or colleagues for their view on this. In any case, it is my decision whether I want to change anything in my work or behavior. A final thought: you can include an immediate feedback exercise whenever you want to get an idea what is going on in the group. A good method for doing this is the flashbulb, where each participant expresses in a couple of sentences his state of mind or thoughts about the topic at hand. For this method to be effective, it is important that participants do not start commenting or discussing what is being said. Provide a framework for giving and receiving feedback. I like to introduce the feedback principles I presented in the first part of this lesson in the initial phase of a seminar and place them on the wall so they are visible all the time. It is important to ensure that these principles are complied with in practice, so when somebody does not follow them, it should be highlighted. Ideally, this is not the sole task of the educator, and also participants share this responsibility. A somewhat formal but effective method for accomplishing this is equipping participants with yellow cards. If a participant notices that the principle has not been sufficiently respected, he or she indicates this to the speaker by raising the yellow card. Usually the speaker realizes his mistake and no further discussions are required. I recommend to be familiar with different methods for organizing feedback. Some can be small and light, like mudslinging. In this activity, participants are asked to brainstorm what they did not like about the given topic and what are aspects that need to be improved. Other methods are complex and allow the group to dive deeper into an issue. I find the group work method World Café offers an excellent framework for doing this. I have included in a slide some websites where to find methods for organizing feedback in groups.